So yesterday we started talking about leaving your comfort zone, and we talked about parachutes. We talked about rappelling. We used a lot of different images, and I think they're going to come back around today. We're going to talk today about how to not be reckless when you leave your comfort zone. And that cuts two ways. And I think there's one way we always think about, but there's another way that I want to talk to us about. And Tom and I are going to go through that more on episode 918 of, you guessed it, Today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for Today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote provides an opportunity for business owners and leaders to discover what is real for them and to be impacted by what is real for others. That is the Renegade way. Let's get real. We all face challenges and get stuck occasionally and are looking for an antidote. Each weekday, this show dives into a topic that may have you stuck, frustrated, and uncertain. Our goal is to share our value in an effort to help you find that one thing, the antidote to your challenges, so that you can get results and make more money. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom.
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
I'm good. I want to talk about parachutes some more.
You do?
I do. I like talking about parachutes. Something I would never do. Someone asked me yesterday, like, you talked about parachutes a lot. Have you ever thought about doing it? I'm like, no. I actually had someone who has offered me many times to pay for it. Many times.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
They want you to just jump out of a plane, or they want you to parachute?
At one point, I think they wanted me to parachute. I think more recently, it's probably jump out the plane.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I know somebody who used to do a lot of parachuting. And I had no desire.
This person actually trained and like is certified that he can like have you. Yeah. Yeah. It's a legit serious effort. You don't just like go twice and boom, you're magically able. That certification is pretty legit.
You mean they would want to take a lot of time to train people who are going to help people jump out of a plane? I would imagine the insurance on that is pretty high. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no desire to jump out of any plane.
No, me either. Me either. None. And that to me seems very reckless.
I would agree.
That's the height of recklessness. If you had to tell me what's the most reckless thing you could do, I think jumping out of an airplane voluntarily would be it.
Yeah, although I watched somebody jump off a rooftop online in a video yesterday, and I was like,
wow, you're really going through the good content.
I don't know what was going on, but there was like somebody standing on the edge of a building, and that alone, looking at a video of that or a photo of that, gives me the, phew, I cannot do that.
That's too funny. I didn't know that about you until yesterday.
Oh man, yeah, no, can't do that.
So the thing is, in business, it's very similar.
Sure.
And that reaction you're having to being at the side of a building, I find confronts me in my business a lot more than I really, lately we've been talking about this last couple of weeks. I've acknowledged in my head how many times in a day I do something that's uncomfortable. It could be a discussion. It could be, I had to go to the bank and deal with something and it was not much fun. And I had to talk to a client about payment. And it wasn't much fun. And I think we tend to think that the successful people just don't have discomfort. They just, they've been doing this for 25 years. It's easy. I talked to someone, an HR person years ago, and she had fired about 15 people. I said, how do you do that? She said, it's never easy. But the thing I tell myself right before I have to let someone go is, I didn't do anything to cause this. This is all them. I'm just the messenger. And to get to this place, they made some choices. They probably wouldn't have been my choices, but they were their choices. And now they have to live with it. I was like, wow, how empowering to understand how someone could do that. But I've talked to people. I talked to someone who had fired 150 50 people, he said, over 25 years. He said, the last one was as hard as the first one. It never is comfortable. And he said, when it becomes comfortable to me, I don't want to ever do it again.
Right.
And I thought, I really think that's one of the things that when we talk about being reckless, when I go on the stage, every time I speak, and I've spoken to different groups, I've been on live TV and radio and all kinds of stuff. It shouldn't be something that makes me nervous. But every single time, right before I get on the stage, I'm nervous. Like, oh, why did I do this? I shouldn't have done this. But the minute I walk out on the stage, that dissipates. And I always feel good about the fact that I have that nervousness because it means it matters.
Sure.
And I think it'd be reckless to just go out there cavalierly and be like, hey, you know what? I'm speaking. I can say whatever I want. Don't care. What are they going to do? Check already cleared 2 weeks ago. Not a problem. They paid for my hotel. I already got my stuff out, so they can't really do anything to me. Hey, so I'm Bob. What do you want to talk about today? That would be reckless or not being prepared for something. You know, that to me, we have a lot of options to be reckless. And one of the ways I see us being reckless is not giving the due amount of respect to the things we get to do. So if I just roll up to this program and don't really think about anything, like, yeah, it's Tuesday, doing this stupid show, I don't have to think about it. That's reckless to me. Now, I'll be honest, didn't really know what exactly the topic was until about 3 minutes before the program, but we had talked about this idea a number of times over the last couple of weeks, and we talked about it each day. So I don't think it's reckless. And another way to be reckless would be someone makes a comment and we go, oh, wow, I can't believe someone would write that. This is the silliest thing I've ever heard. You know, what were you thinking? Really? That's your comment? That would be reckless. And I think we have a choice all the time. When we get comfortable in a situation, it's easy to be reckless. It's very easy to just not focus on things. You know, I liken it to the idea that when you and I are talking off of the program, I'm a bit looser with my language. I talk about different topics. We have some inside jokes about things. We joke about that. It would be reckless to bring that to the program. That's safe in that environment. And it would be reckless for you and me to go out with the people we're with, for the four of us out one night and spend the whole evening talking inside jokes. And the other two people going, I can't believe it. I'm sitting here. This is ridiculous. That would be reckless. And it would be reckless in business. You know, I'm thinking of an example for an owner of a business to go to one of their employees and say, I have to let go of 3 people. I know this isn't your job, but which 3 do you think I should let go of? And someone told me that they were put in that position not that long ago. And they said, so now it's not part of their responsibility. They're told that 3 people are going to go. The owner is asking them to weigh in on it. And all 3 that they had to say, because owner wouldn't let them off the hook, were really close friends. And so now this person has to keep this secret and is involved in the decision. And they were saying to me, I can't believe I got put in this situation. And my thought was, they did nothing to cause the recklessness that the owner caused. And the owner was probably just, I'm trying to gather information. I'm really uncomfortable with this. This person knows things, but they didn't think through the implications.
Sure.
I think that's where recklessness ultimately lands, is when we don't think through the implications.
Or we don't consider the risk, which I
Right.
think is sort of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think risk is a better word, because there is a risk. That owner going to that employee might have said, you know, they said, I'm a key employee. That for a minute, I thought, you know what, if you're going to let someone go, just let me go. Because I don't want to work at a place where I've got to, you know, keep this secret. It was going to be like 10 days. And they're like, you know, I have lunch with these people. We hang out on the weekends. How am I going to do that with them and not say anything? But if I say something that's not right, And if I abandon them for 10 days, they're going to be like, hey, what's going on? It was a no-win situation for this person. And they were asking me, like, what would you do? And I'm like, oh, I got nothing. Not a thing. And I don't know what they ended up doing. But the recklessness, and think of the implications and the risk. The owner took a risk going down that road. They put their employee at risk. The employee now has risk with other employees. And that culture of that workplace is probably shifted dramatically for as long as they're all there.
Sure.
Because you can't come back from that. I think that's the other part about the recklessness is we make an action, maybe we don't think. I've certainly done many things where I didn't think it through.
It's hard to think it through all the time. I mean, that's the challenge, right? Is that
right?
You only know what you know, and you hear, oh, this sounds like a good idea. I should try this. And it's hard to really think through all of the variables of what could happen. And yet, I think there's a lot of value in trying to do that. You know, again, talking about jumping out of an airplane, if you go out, if you go up in the plane and the person's like, okay, here's a plastic bag, I want you to jump out. And you don't stop and say, it doesn't sound like what everyone else has done, or what would be the issues if I can't hold on to it? And, there's just so many things that you can think about, even with information. You can process it how you want to ask, well, is this secure? What happens if this doesn't happen? What's my safety net? And I think without considering that, then you are doing it recklessly, and you're putting yourself and potentially others in harm's way. And I think that's the thing we talk about is it's great to be a renegade, and it's great to do things outside of your comfort zone. It can have real value. Yet I think that there's almost a requirement that you at least consider what is the risk in doing some of these things, so that you have potentially a backup plan, you have someone to support you, you have all those things that make it less risky to step out of your comfort zone. I think people who are like, well, all right, I want to, I hate my job and I'm just going to go in and quit and I'll do something different, without even having considered, like, what are some of the first steps, or someone who's going to help them figure out how those first steps, and what is my safety net, that if things don't seem to go as planned, what's either the backup plan or the net that's going to catch me so that I don't hurt myself further.
I want to go back to your plastic bag analogy in the airplane.
Okay.
Because I have a point I want to make here, and that is, if someone handed me a plastic bag and said, Bob, jump out of the plane with this plastic bag, the first thing I would do would be turn around and look at the plane to find the person that I could ask to verify them, not losing my mind that this is not a good idea. Because I don't think that in that situation, I would make, I know in my mind this doesn't make sense, but this person of authority, they've done 50 million jumps, they're telling me this plastic bag is going to work. So my first inclination is I'm going to trust them. And I think that's the thing. You need that third party to help you see the situation for what it is. You have to talk through it and go, this plastic bag doesn't, how am I going to hold it? I mean, it's just a plastic bag. Those things break when you put too much weight in it. I'm talking like the ham that was in there last week and it broke. I weigh more than a ham. On a good day, I don't, like, significantly more. So we've got a problem here, right? And that person's going to say to you, yeah, Bob, you're right. That's a problem. And at that point, that confirmation is what I need to be able to say to that person, I'm sorry, sir. I get that you're trying to help me, but I'm not really liking the plastic bag idea. You got a parachute? Right. And the person next to you is saying, hey, Bob, yeah, ask him. And if the guy says, no, you're going with the plastic bag, that person's going to, Bob, you need to push harder. Don't jump out of the plane. Bob, I'm telling you, that's a bad idea. You know that's a bad idea. And I think that's the piece that we often lose. when I make reckless decisions, it's because I'm in my head with just my perspective.
And knowledge and experience.
Right. Like I was telling you about something I wrote not that long ago and some of the implications from it. I thought about writing that thing for several weeks to an organization. And it was only after I talked to someone that I really respect and they shared some of the same issues that I felt that it was okay to do this, that I wasn't on an island alone. Or if I was on an island alone, it was an island that I wanted to be on because I talked through it with another person who knew the situation, knew me well enough to be able to say, yeah, this is kind of how you roll. Not really surprising. And have you thought about this, this, and this? It could end this way for you. Are you prepared to deal with those consequences? Yeah, I am. Okay, you're sure? Yeah, I am. Okay. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't do it. He didn't tell me to do it or not do it. He just made me look at the perspective of, well, okay, I know these people. When you send this letter, they may respond this way. Are you prepared for that? He actually came up with 3 aspects of it that I didn't come up with, which made me think hard about it. Had I done it just unilaterally without talking to him, it would have been reckless. And the outcome would have been probably a lot different because his discussion with me helped me color how I wrote what I wrote to be more sensitive to other people's concerns. So rather than
different perspective.
saying, here's what I think, this is the Bob world, jump on the Bob bandwagon, or enough of you. It was, hey, here's my view. I think this is your view. And here's a third thing that we all agree is what we're working around. How can we find that common ground? And I think so often our recklessness comes because we're unilaterally choosing to do or not do things.
I think it also comes because we have limited knowledge, experience, and perspective.
Right.
You know, I mean, yes, we might have a lot of it, and yet it's still limited to what's real for us. That when we share it with others, they can share from their perspective, from their knowledge, from what's real for them, which is going to be different. And they may see something that we don't see. And I think that's sometimes the biggest challenge, is that we feel like, well, this is what's real for me, and I'm just going to share it. And we talk about that on the show all the time, to share our value. And I think that's because that's what's real for us, because it might have an impact for someone else. And I think it's also helpful that being reckless is not asking others for what's real for them, so that we aren't just going on our limited knowledge, experience, and perspective, that we expanded that to some others, just so we get a sense of what else is out there that we're not aware of. And I think that's so often people just jump into things without trying to leverage the community that they have and gain from their knowledge, experience, and perspective.
Or expand their community, right? I mean,
Right.
That's one of the things I've done in the last couple of years that's been really valuable. You know, finding a coach for me who has a perspective that was very different from mine, and they had a strength where I had an obvious area to improve. So saying, I've been reckless in this regard. Here's someone who can bring up my skill level in this area if I'm open to them and what they have to share. And that's the other part of it, right? So
Sure.
often we're like, oh, well, I'm going to go to this networking event. Business owner, I go to the networking event, and I stand in the corner with my 3 buddies for 2 hours. And I leave the event and go, oh, such a waste of time. I didn't meet one person. I didn't give away 1 card. That to me is reckless, because that's not executing on what you're trying to do. And I don't think we think of that as reckless. It's just like, well, I wasn't really in the mood. I was at the event. People should have come up to me. That's what someone told me a couple weeks ago. They're like, I was at the event. No one came up to me. And I'm like, where were you? Oh, I was over in the corner. I'm like, I've always thought when I go to an event, the people that want to talk to me most are the people in the corner. And they're like, well, I mean, it was uncomfortable. Okay, that's a different discussion. And if you were uncomfortable, could you have found a way to be more comfortable? Could you have come? I was at the event. Could you have come over? Hey, Bob, I'm really uncomfortable. If you meet someone, can you just bring them over? Because I'm not sure how to introduce myself. Can you just like introduce me to 3 people? Oh yeah, that'd be great. That's actually a win for me, because then I'm not talking about me. I'm like, hey, you got to meet my friend John. You and I've done it at events, right?
Sure.
Yeah, this whole wingman thing. Oh, you got to meet Tom. He's amazing. Oh, really? I haven't met Tom. Yeah, go meet Tom. Yeah. I'm telling you, Tom's the guy you got to talk to. Let me walk you over and meet Tom. But his recklessness was not thinking about the implications of his actions, because I looked over at him several times and he looked like he didn't want to be there. And it happens. I mean, I've been to networking events where I don't want to be there.
And it can be a choice.
It can be a choice. But if you say afterwards it was a lousy event, that's not on the organization that did it, right? I mean, that's the thing. And that would be reckless to go tell people, oh, don't go to their events because they're really lousy. I went to their event last Tuesday night. No one came up to me. Where were you? I was in the corner. It was dark. No one was really paying attention in the corner. Oh, you weren't over by where the food was? No. And we don't usually ask those questions. And I think that's the part of it, because when you ask those questions, that's when the opportunity lies.
Sure.
You know, it would have been reckless for me when I saw him afterwards not to have the discussion. Like, hey, I saw you there. What was going on? Because I thought something was wrong with him. You know, I like legitimately, he was someone who, when I'm talking to him one-on-one, he's very engaged. His hands are moving. I didn't know that he was really uncomfortable in that networking environment. And I said to him, I wish you'd told me in advance.
Right.
I could have done
a lot. You could have talked about how
you.
to do it differently.
Right. I would have been happy to drive down with you, talk through it. Hey, who do you want to meet? Let me go up to him first. And he's like, I didn't even think about that. Because we get so wrapped up in our own head. His thought was, I hate networking events. I don't want to be here. I've got to do this thing because everyone tells me it's good for my business. And I think the challenge there is we only have so much knowledge and experience and perspective, and we've got to acknowledge that. I mean, that's one of the things I've tried very hard in the last couple months to be really strategic about. You know, this is my limit. You talked to me about something yesterday. You gave me a hard perspective to hear. You gave me something over the weekend that was another hard perspective to hear. Tom, would you quit? I'm sick of it. I know what I'm doing here. I don't want to hear from you. Or I could say, okay, Tom's sharing a perspective to hopefully discourage me from being reckless, and to not consider what you send to me would be reckless, because you know me well enough to, and you're not doing it to just, Bob, you're wrong. This is the stupidest thing you've ever done. I think your perspective is, hey, I just want you to have your eyes open.
Right.
And you're not judging my decision after I take that information in. If I wanted to discuss it, you talk about it. If I said, Tom, I can't believe, you know, we even had a discussion yesterday morning. Hey, you didn't respond for an hour. I kind of thought I set you off. You did for a minute, but then it's like, okay, I can't be reckless here. This person cares about me. And I think that's the other part of this that is really important. The way we get around being reckless and the way we get more perspectives is to find someone who cares about us, because they can do it in a way that's caring, versus the person who says, Bob, it's the dumbest thing you've ever. Really? Bob, you're going to jump out of the airplane with the paper bag? Really? Because you didn't like the plastic bag? Oh, okay, that's great. Let me know how that turns out. And we all have those people in our lives, right?
Sure.
They just judge it and say, I can't believe you're so stupid. But here's the thing. If I were going to jump out of the airplane with the paper bag, plastic bag, and someone would have to really work through with me why that wasn't a bad idea, or why that was a bad idea. And I know it's a completely extreme example, but I think there are plenty of things I've done in my life that aren't much different than that.
Well, and I think the hard part is finding someone who's not too invested in the results.
Mm-hmm.
Because then their perspective and might be clouded a little bit, or, you know, because they are maybe more likely to judge it because it may have an impact on them. And I think that's one of the challenges, is how do you find somebody who's more neutral and is just willing to share, here's what I know. You know, if you would turn to the person in the plane and ask somebody, and they happen to be the best friend or business partner of the instructor, their response was probably clouded by, well, I could say this, or I could help my buddy out and say, this is my perspective that is clouded by my connection to someone else. And I think that's hard when we try to make business decisions. We go to people who we know and trust, and sometimes they're too invested in the discussion to truly offer you the knowledge and perspective you need to.
They're limited by their own knowledge, experience,
Correct.
and perspective.
And in some ways, they're being reckless in how they respond to you, because they're thinking about how it impacts them,
right?
Not how it impacts you.
Right. I think that's and I think people in that camp can often be our spouses, significant others, our family, really good friends that we go to, you know, and say, hey, so I'm trying to figure out this business thing. And they're like, I'm sorry, we're out playing golf. Really, Bob? I was hoping to spend the day playing golf and not talking about work, which is really code for, I don't want to be involved in your decisions, because I don't want to be the one when you do something reckless and it goes wrong and you come back next time to play golf and go, hey, that was really bad advice you gave me.
Right.
Because that's what we tend to do, because we often don't want to admit our recklessness.
Sure.
Yeah. I think I've done that a number of times with people where it's like, well, you told me to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's part of it, right? Well, everyone told me not to pay taxes this year. Oh, okay. And everyone told you to jump out of the plane with a plastic bag. How'd that work? So what's your one thing today?
You know, I think about being reckless is when we talked about it earlier, is when we stick only to our knowledge, experience, and perspective, especially if it's something outside of our comfort zone, where we have limited, if any, knowledge or experience around it. And so we just go off and do it. You know, like businesses will say, well, everybody seems to be saying that Facebook ads is the way to go. That's the best way to get clients. And you're just like, oh, okay. I don't know anything about it. I talked
to someone that we were talking about before the show. They had spent a fortune on Facebook ads because everyone told that person that, oh, yeah, you do one weekend, you'll have more business than you know what to do with.
And if you don't really know what you're doing.
Facebook ads work in certain circumstances.
With probably the guidance of somebody who's done it before. And I think that's the challenge, is so often we don't go off and get other feedback on it.
Or acknowledge our limitations, right?
Correct.
I'm not a Facebook expert. And I've spent money on Facebook ads and seen them not work. And I've spent a lot of money on Facebook ads. And in that case, they worked. And I mean, a lot of money.
And I think that's the challenge, is that there's, you know, just because somebody else does it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be reckless for us to do it. Because we don't have their knowledge, experience, and perspective. I think that's the thing, is that so often we see what other people do and say, oh, I'll just do that, even though I have no knowledge, experience, and perspective except what I've viewed from them. And we don't consider, well, how much do they have, and why has this worked for them? Is because they truly have spent a lot of time, effort, and energy learning this, gaining this knowledge. And that's why. And we don't know how many times they have been doing it to finally get to the point where they.
Right. And how many times they may have failed along the way.
Bob, you like
they'll tell you that. Kelly's like my favorite person every morning when she says words of affirmation. She just gets me. Whatever my mood is, it gets better when she tells me things like that.
There you go.
Thank you, Kelly. That's really sweet.
What's your one thing?
I think my one thing is that we have to be really aware of our limits and also the implications of our decisions on other people. I think that was something that if I go back 20, 25 years ago when I was leading teams and when I was working with really big teams in an organization, I rarely thought about the implications of my actions. I just kind of went and it was the world of Bob. And I can just imagine the tidal waves I caused in this organization. Like I've apologized to the president of the company probably 15 times. At least once a year, I send her a note and go, Gene, I'm really sorry. I know I was a handful. I know. Thank you for having faith in me, because I was just naive to the effect of my decisions on other people, and they were simple decisions. They weren't like, we're going to change our whole product line. It was, hey guys, we're going to stay late Wednesday night because we have a production error and we all need to stay late Wednesday night. I told people that Tuesday, and it was mandatory. And I burned a couple of bridges in that 24 hours. And the best part was, not only did they get to stay late thanks to me, but I made the mistake in the production that caused them all to have to stay late. So not only did I mess up, but I messed up in how I handled messing up. And it was one of those compound errors that if I had been in a different place in my career, I could have said to someone, hey, I made a really bad production mistake and we've got to fix it. What do you think the best way for me to get this to work would be? And I know anyone would have said to me, Bob, we've got 60 people in this company. At least 10 like you still. I bet if you ask for volunteers, you'll get 10 people that would be anxious to help you. Feed them dinner, bring donuts in the next morning, call it a day. Instead, I kind of forced people that already were were already challenged by me, and just magnified it. And if you had told me that day, hey, you're being reckless, I don't think I would have understood it. It would have been the person who could have really sat me down and said, you're just making mistake after mistake, because every time you make a decision, you're worried about how you look, not how it affects other people.
Sure.
And so if the people that work with me at that company are listening, it's like, he finally figured it out. Because I had a path of destruction in that company.
Well, you knew what you knew.
And I also didn't have people around me that were comfortable enough to, that Bob's going to implode. We'll just let Bob implode. I think when I finally, I was actually put in a position where it's like, we're thinking we're going to let you go. And I was like, no, give me one more chance. And part of my penance, which was great, was I had to go to all 8 people that were leaders of the organization. They all had to agree that I could stay. So I went to all 8 on a Friday afternoon and apologized to them absolutely sincerely and said, I want one more chance. I realized what I did. And the next Monday I came in and I was a different person. And about a year and a half later, I left that company. And 6 of those 8 people made a point to come to me and say, I didn't think you had it in you. You really turned it around. And it was because I got smacked I smacked myself in the face so many times. I was like, all right, I got to stop doing it. And it was one of the most profound lessons for me in how you can be reckless and contrite about it. And when I finally realized, because I went to all 8 of those people and literally said to them, I made this mistake with you. I made this mistake with you. I did this with you. I did this. It was a brutal afternoon. I mean, it was just like hard to go through. But they all said, come in Monday and be the person we know you can be. And I think that's the opportunity we have when we get someone to talk to us, when we're being reckless or when we might be reckless. Hey, be the person you can be. I think that's what we do when we're coaching people. Honestly, it's like, hey, you know what? You're here. You want to be here. Figure out what might get you there. And then, hey, you know what? Try that. because I think you can be there. And I think that's the power of the coaching that you and I do, which is why, Tom, I know you're shocked to hear it. There he goes. He's going to the button. I knew he'd get there. We have your Get Real, Get Results, Make More Money program. That's right. And you're not going to hear about this again today. This is the last time you're going to see this screen. So really enjoy it. Subtle hint, Tom. And you see that REAL is capitalized there, right? It stands for 4 things. REAL is recognize, evaluate, activate, and learn. And that's the process Tom and I use to help you get the results you're looking for. And it says make more money, but it's not all about making more money. It can be about finding more time to do the things you want to do. It can be about enjoying your work in a way you never thought possible. It can be about finding employees. It can be leading your team more effectively, leading meetings more effectively, doing a presentation that would be helpful to you. It's all over the place. It's about making more of what you are and getting where you want to be. If that's something that would interest you, you should talk to Tom or me. It's real simple. Find us, direct message us, track us down on LinkedIn, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com, find a carrier pigeon and send it to us. Whatever works. You owe yourself this opportunity. You don't want to be reckless. You don't want to get stuck. So many times we get stuck. This is a pathway out of being stuck. This is an opportunity to really grow and achieve what you know is possible. You know deep down inside it's possible. And you may be frustrated. You may be ready to give up. I get it. I've been there. Give yourself one more chance. Talk to Tom or me. You will not regret it. How's that, Tom?
I like it.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah, I think
that came from the heart. That was like really, I almost brought tears to my eyes there.
Okay.
No, I started to think about that. Oh, I can't believe I talked about that job. Oh, that was so difficult.
Well, I mean, it's, and you could consider that reckless because you didn't really ask anybody, hey, should I do this? What could be the implications of this? And I think that's one of the challenges that sometimes we might be reckless. It might be reckless if we don't talk to someone. Sometimes it works out. And yet I think that so often especially when we want to leave our comfort zone, I think that you have probably gotten more comfortable in sharing some of your past experiences on this show, which has allowed you to feel like maybe that wasn't outside of your comfort zone. So it wasn't reckless.
It also was one of the experiences that taught me the most about myself. And I think I grew more that Friday afternoon professionally than any other day in my life. I really thought I was going to get fired. I mean, and it was like, oh, I've never gotten fired before. This is really bad.
I think
and if someone's listening to this program, she would be shocked to hear that that's how close it was. That was not disclosed because I was so embarrassed by it. I mean,
sure.
Yeah. And I think that's the opportunity, right? When you've got to figure out how to get out of that plane, that's when you consider things. If you and I were up in a plane, we don't want a parachute, but the plane's going down, engines caught fire, and the pilot's like, guys, it's jump, or the alternative is you crash. Suddenly, the parachute looks really inviting.
Even the plastic bag might look inviting.
Sad to say, yes. And that's and that's where the opportunity is, because maybe you couldn't land with a plastic bag. I don't know. Kelly says something that, yes, Kelly, you have captured the essence. Yes. A woman named Jean showed me incredible grace that day. Not only did she explain it to me in a way that I understood, and she had stacked things up. We sat at a Friendly's in Hunt Valley, and she went through it. And I said, oh, it's not that bad. And she's like, well, what about this? And what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? I mean, she went through like 12 what about thises before I cried uncle. I'm like, okay. And she said, it's just not working out. And I said, what can I do? And she said, I don't think there's anything I can do or you can do. And then I said, what if? I apologized to the people I hurt. She said, I don't know if they'd take you back then. I said, can I try? And she said, sure. So I went back and I tried. I don't think she expected it to work. I certainly didn't. There was one that I thought for sure was going to be like, he's worked for me. He's a pain in my butt. I want him out of my life. Let him go. And that person, those people also showed incredible grace.
Sure.
In that they allowed me to explain myself, and they recognized that I think they recognized I was being reckless and didn't know I was being reckless. And there's a
Many
difference.
times happens. I think there's a lot of times when we're trying to come up with solutions and anything sounds good. Oh, I'm not getting clients. What do I do? Somebody says, oh, Facebook ads really work. Okay, great. Let me throw a whole lot of money into Facebook ads. We don't know that that's reckless because we think it's the best that we have to come up with, given our knowledge, experience, and perspective. And
or someone we respect told us to do it.
Yes.
And we didn't go through a process of, hey, does this fit me?
Right, because it works for them doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for
Or
us.
they say it works for them.
Yes.
Because sometimes it works, and
Right. How you define works is different.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much, Kelly, especially for your comments, for being with us today.
Thank you.
If you happen to be listening to the podcast, we know that there's no place to share your thoughts and ideas. If you are listening and like to share your one thing, we'd welcome you to put it in the comments. For your podcast people, please feel free to join us inside our Sculpt Your Business from Chaos and Confusion to Confidence and Control Facebook group, where we're trying to help people figure out how not to be reckless by either gaining from the value that they find in there, and also hopefully that they're sharing the value that they have, not recklessly, just sharing it, so that others may benefit from it as well. And so if you're not a part of that group, we would invite you to become a part of it. It's easy to do. Just go to Facebook and search for Sculpt Your Business. And then you can just ask to join and answer a couple of questions. You can become a part of our growing community. So we look forward to seeing you inside of that group, or we won't see you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern time. This is our day off. So we'll see you Thursday morning, 7 a.m.-ish Eastern time, for our next episode of today's Antidote.
Hey, over the next 48 hours until Thursday morning, embrace the renegading you. That's one of the ways to overcome being reckless, believe it or not. Embracing your renegade nature.
Because renegades are not reckless.
That's right. That's right.
We choose our own pathway, and yet we don't do it in a way that's going to impact us or others.
Negative.
All right, everyone, go out and
enjoy. Impact them, but not negatively.
Correct. I just didn't want to use negatively.
Oh.
All right, everyone, go out and enjoy your day and your day tomorrow, and we will see you soon.
Nope. Oh, there you go. Good. That wasn't the screen. Thank goodness.